I'm Robin, and I'll be leading this lab. So today we're going to talk about how to, it went to my screen. That's fine. So today we're going to talk about how to validate infrastructure, detect drift, and enforce policies with HCP Terraform. And as Julia said, our teaching assistants are going to be James and William. And if you guys could wave in the back, I can't see you, but hopefully everybody else can. So if you're following along and you get stuck, just raise your hand and hopefully they can get you unstuck. Or when I pause for questions, they have microphones so that we can all hear your question. So what are we going to talk about today? We're talking about automating our validation and enforcement. If you're using Terraform, which you probably are, you're already automating deploying your actual infrastructure. So today we're talking about a layer on top of that, past that, about validation. And Terraform includes a number of different tools that and we'll look at some of them today to help you do that, to give you the confidence that, yeah, the stuff we validated, we deployed is still valid. It's still the stuff we intended. Nobody came along behind and changed it or anything like that. And of course, we're all humans. We know that operators make errors, so we want to just reduce the amount of manual work that we're doing. Right. Today we're going to talk about, like I said, a few different ways to validate your infrastructure. First off, configuration level validation, and that's preconditions and postconditions. So that lives within your Terraform module, which helps you write your Terraform modules so that more people can consume them more easily, more successfully, and again, reduce rewriting modules. Oh, I need this one that's a little bit custom. If you write your modules to be reused, then you'll find that you'll have fewer modules to maintain. And then the next part we're going to talk about is policy as code. And HCP Terraform supports two policy as code engines, Sentinel, homegrown here at HashiCorp, and the Open Policy Agent, an open source project which also does policy enforcement. So HCP Terraform, by using these policy engines, can actually inspect your plan and can issue either an advisory or a mandatory policy failure. And we'll look at both kinds. But again, it's about here's how to use our configuration more correctly. More correctly. I think that's a word. We got a little diagram here, basically talking about where that policy question happens. So during your plan for your workspaces, you'll apply these policy sets, and HCP Terraform actually introspects every plan that's run to see if it passes the policy we're going for. And then the third thing we'll look at today is health assessments. So this is about understanding when your infrastructure is drifted off of what maybe you originally provisioned. In the example we'll look at today, everybody has engineers who, oh, we need to do something a little bit outside of the standard flow of work. I need to log into a system on the weekend and I don't have access and nobody's on call, so I'm just going to log into in this case, AWS control panel, give myself the access that I need, fix the problem, and probably remember to go lock down the access when I'm done. But again, we're all human, we might forget. And so since we're talking about policy and compliance at a few different layers, we're also talking about different personas within your organization. A small organization might just be you, but a larger organization, we're going to have potentially different people or even different teams working on these different parts of the Terraform ecosystem. So your platform team or your module author is going to be, actually I have the slide exactly backwards, which I did practice this, and you only notice when you're in front of a live audience. So that should say that the platform team is responsible for developing Terraform configuration, maybe deploying some resources, and then The security team is about your policies and guidelines, and then the development team and the actual module users, those are going to be the ones that are going to be deploying your configuration, but also will want to enable drift detection and look at your workspace to ensure that your configuration still matches what you deployed. And so in this lab scenario, let's see if I've got it backwards here too as well. No, I think this is right. So for this lab scenario, those three roles are going to be doing three specific things. First, as the module author, we're going to add a precondition to the module we're creating that helps to ensure that it's used correctly. We give it to people, hopefully it has documentation, but also some guardrails to make sure that, in this case, we're not over-provisioning Bastion host. And then as a member of the security team, we're going to talk about Sentinel policies to maybe prevent some things that might be against our organization's best practices. In this case, Friday deployments, as well as not over-permissioning your security groups. And then the third thing we'll look at is drift detection to identify when your infrastructure does diverge from what you originally provisioned. So as I said, with this lab, this is available on our developer platform. And so with the fancy QR code, you should be able to scan that if you'd like to follow along. There's also a URL there if I wasn't sure if the QR code would work on the screen this far away. But this is the lab that I'll be doing. And so if you follow along today, great. If not, you can always follow along afterward. So I'll leave that up for just another few seconds before we switch. And I think everybody's had a chance to hopefully at least take a picture. And like I said, it is on our developer platform. So we can go ahead and switch to my laptop now. I think, there we go. So if you follow that URL, you should end up here at developer. And straight to this tutorial where we will follow for the lab. So the tutorial is going to have you do a few different things first. Hopefully you already have Terraform installed. You will need an AWS account as well as an HCP Terraform account. And then finally, you'll need to credential. You'll need to configure your credentials with an HCP Terraform. There are a few different ways to do that. Of course, I've already done that for myself for the magic of demos, but you will need AWS credentials to follow along. So the first thing we'll do is we'll create an example repository in GitHub based off of this template, which again, magic of demos, magic of clicking, which I've already done, and I've also cloned it down to my local machine. So we will skip ahead a little bit. And let's look at what's in this configuration, this repository. So I have checked it out, and two E's in tree. So in addition to like a license and a README and things like that, this repository does have an example Terraform configuration, as well as a little module that the configuration uses. It's also got directories for OPA and Sentinel policies. Now for your real-world policies, you don't necessarily want to have them in the same repository as your configuration, as generally, we encourage you to have your policies be a little bit more broad than a single workspace, so across a project or even across your whole organization. But just like with your infrastructure configuration, allowing you to manage your policy as code lets you have that automation and reproducibility. So we'll look at that as well. So I'll go ahead and switch to my text editor, and we can explore this configuration a little bit. Where am I here? The main.tf in the root directory doesn't do much. It's just setting up the provider and using this network module. And again, just as an example for our lab here, the network module is pretty simple. It's got a couple of inputs and outputs, but the idea is it's setting up a very simple example network with a VPC. And for the purposes of this lab, what we care about is, let me see if I can expand that, is this bastion host. Now, with things like Boundary out there these days, bastion hosts are becoming a little less common. If you haven't used this technology, it's, I guess, old school now, where if we have a private network running within our cloud provider, sometimes we need to get within that private network to troubleshoot things. One of the ways to do that is through SSH, by SSHing into the bastion host and then into your network. And that way, the internal parts of your network are locked down and not accessible at all from the outside world. And then you can lock down the access to your bastion host to, say, your own corporate network or something like that. Again, here at HashiCorp, we'd point you toward Boundary, but this is still a very common scenario for a lot of people. So if you're using Terraform within your organization, we wouldn't be surprised if you had a module a little bit like this. So looking back at the tutorial, just want to make sure. In order to provision this module, or in order to make use of this module, we're going to distribute it within our organization, probably on the Terraform private registry. And that means people are going to use it, which is a good thing. But one of the things as a best practice for a bastion host is you don't want to over-provision them. You don't need a fancy 8-core machine just to SSH from one system to the other. So the first kind of policy enforcement that we're going to look at today is let's just make sure that the instance isn't over-provisioned. So to do that, I'm going to copy and paste from our tutorial here so I don't have to type on stage, which is, I'm sure, my nightmare. So the first thing I'm going to do is to get some information about the instance type. So this is a data source. It's going to look up the instance type that is passed in as a variable right here. And it's going to look up information about that straight from AWS. So we could say, oh, we're just going to give you a list of allowed instance types, which might work, but maybe you do want some flexibility. And that's where policy lets us be a little bit more flexible. Since we're looking at this, this precondition at plan time, we can use data to inform whether the precondition passes or fails. So in addition to the data, I'm also going to get this lifecycle block and copy and paste that into the instance. And if you haven't used these yet with your Terraform configuration, the lifecycle block can have preconditions or postconditions before apply or after apply. And that condition can rely on logic from our data source. And we're just going to look at the instance type and say, okay, does it have 2 or fewer cores? Again, since we're distributing this to our team, we want a nice error message, that gives us that error message here. So let me make sure I've saved my changes to the file, which I have. And the other thing I wanted to look at here is, so if we run Terraform apply now, what's going to happen? Well, we'll look in our auto.tfrs file, and we can see that we're provisioning a 2x large instance, which, spoiler alert, has more than 2 cores. I think it's like 8. So let's run this. So again, for the purpose of the demo, I already initialized, but now we can apply, or I think we'll just do an apply. Doesn't matter that much. This will be captured at plan time. I am running HCP Terraform in remote CLI mode. So my actual configuration is going to run within HCP Terraform, and I'll just stream the results here. That's going to take a couple minutes, so I'll go ahead and pause for first round of questions. Any questions from anybody? We're going to raise your hand. No. Everybody is following along, or it's right after lunch and everybody's in here napping. I will speak more quietly for the nappers, but if you can't hear me, do ask me to speak up. Okay, so I made a mistake. Why? Little ignore the man behind the curtain. I don't have credentials. Let me push those. and make sure, I know what I did. Okay. Remember when I said we did need credentials attached to your workspace? I need to do that. So, oops. I went to the wrong place. Go back here. There we go. So I'm going to go to my workspace's variables page, and I actually have a variable set with my credentials attached. Okay, so now I've attached credentials. Just reading through this error message, since I know I panicked a little bit and went fast, it's just saying no credentials sources found. So we didn't provision the variables. Now that we have, I'll run and apply again, and hopefully get a better, different and better error message. So during the plan, in fact, let's go ahead and look at this in the web UI. So here's our run. It's in the planning phase. And either in the CLI or in the web UI, it doesn't matter which mode you run Terraform in, we'll see the same error message. And that's the one I was hoping for. So it's going to say, there's our condition that failed, and it's going to say, hey, change the value. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Here's the same error message from the command line. And let me find my editor, and we're going to make it a T2 small. All right, and I'll just apply that again. So now our condition will pass. Again, just to summarize what we looked at with pre, and of course you can use post conditions as well. This is about writing modules that are more reusable, that your end users will have more success with, and hopefully follow your organization's best practices along the way. Let's make sure. Okay, we're still refreshing. There we go. So we're going to add 25 resources, including our network, the Bastion host, and all of that. And I'll go ahead and approve that while we go through some more of the lab. And this is where I was really going to stop for questions. Do we have any? I'm not seeing any hands. I will keep going. Okay, so preconditions and postconditions are great, but one of the, I talked about the advantage of having them, having your conditions live with your module. They're right there with the configuration, so it's easy to maintain them both at once. The disadvantage is that, of course, anybody can write any Terraform configuration that they like and try to run it within the org. So this is where a policy agent like OPA or Sentinel allows us to have an org-wide or a project-wide view of every run that happens within our project or our organization. So again, the tutorial that I linked to has both OPA and Sentinel. Today we'll do Sentinel. But as far as functionality, HCP Terraform uses them in very similar ways. So looking in my Sentinel directory here, I've got two policies. I've got one called Friday deploys and one called public ingress. Again, these policies are going to operate at plan time. And so we can look at things that are going on at plan time. So let me dig into the deployment days. And all this is doing, what am I trying to get? It's going to take an input parameter called forbidden days and say, hey, the rule fails if, sorry, the rule passes if it's not a forbidden day. Double negatives there. But if the day of the week is not in our list, then we can deploy. Otherwise, it says no. And then the public ingress rule is a little bit more complex because there's a few different ways to set a CIDR block. And it's also set on a resource, on a block within a resource. So within the plan, the first thing we do is use the Sentinel plugin TF plan, which knows how to interpret Terraform plans. And it's going to say, okay, this is the forbidden ingress CIDR block. The 5 zeros here mean everywhere. And that's what we're going to restrict. So if we are creating or updating, but not deleting, an ingress rule that includes one of these forbidden CIDR blocks, then we'll fail the rule. Every other CIDR block, totally allowed. So with these two rules, again, these are in our Git repo. We need to tell HCP Terraform about them. So within HCP Terraform, there's our run. And let me just make sure that it did, in fact, complete before I move on. Yeah, so we've got 28. Oh, we got a... Oh, this is the old run. There's the successful run. So we did successfully create our resources there. Next, though, I want to look at policy sets. So I will go into our organization settings and find policy sets there on the left. Now for the free tier, you do get one policy set to work with, but for the, I'm going to mess up the name of the tiers now. Don't tell anybody. But for the plus tier, you get an unlimited number of policy sets. And of course, it's also available in Terraform Enterprise. So I'm going to connect our policy set. There's essentially 3 ways to do it. You can manage policies one by one, and you can use the API for automation. But the vast majority of users of policy sets are going to use the version control solution. It's going to be very familiar if you manage your Terraform infrastructure and version control. Yeah, let me get you a microphone, and I think we have a question. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to know if there was a way to have built-in policies already in the UI in HCP, because sometimes you got a lot of standards like CIS benchmarks, and I've been using tools like Checkov and Trivi, and they're like already listed, so I don't have like the 000 sort of egress or ingress rules.
Yeah.
How about like having a repo or like a sort of a destination where we can just sort of extract all those known built-in policies without actually having to write a configuration in Sentinel?
Yeah, so we do have, as part of the registry, we do have a policy library. I don't have any word on like direct integration here yet, so I can just click. I know it's planned, but I can't tell you, oh, it's going to be ready like at a particular time. But yeah, we're definitely looking at more integrations between the registry and HCP Terraform. Okay, so I'll go ahead and add our policies here. We're going to use Sentinel again. Within the HCP Terraform UI, there isn't a huge amount of difference here. And I'm drawing a blank on what, learn Terraform, what to name our policy. Policy. So I'll just give it that name. I'll leave the description empty. And here's where you can decide at what level your policies are enforced. It really depends on your org and on how you operate. Generally, though, you might want to enable your policies on a project basis or even for an entire org versus a workspace. But for this tutorial, we're just going to do it on a workspace, and I'm going to do it on the Learn Terraform Drift and Policy workspace. And we'll use the agent with the latest runtime, and we'll leave that the override box checked. Again, when you create the policy set, you can decide whether mandatory is truly mandatory or whether it's overridable by the operator. And again, that just depends on how your org operates. And so I'm going to connect to the same version control repository that we connected to earlier. So there's our drift and policy. And our policies are in the Sentinel subdirectory. So once that's set up, I'll just click Next. And then, as you recall, with the deployment days policy, we have this parameter, and I will just copy and paste it from here so I don't typo it. So it's forbidden days. And then that value is actually just going to be an array. And I do want it to fail today. And for an extra trick, it's on GMT. So I believe it's still Wednesday in Greenwich. So Wednesday. I'll just put in the value of Wednesday and save that. So now I've got everything set up and I'm ready to connect it. I'll go ahead and do that now. And this will give me all the information that I just entered here in a summary. So I'll close that. And let me just make sure with my notes. Is there anything I forgot? I did forget. Okay. So before I actually run the policies, let's look at Sentinel's testing framework. So within this Sentinel directory, I've got the sentinel.hcl file with the two policies that refer to the policies in this directory. Along with those policies, we've also included tests. So the naming system here essentially just matches the name of the policy. So it's going to look within those directories. So we can run, just like any programming language or even Terraform's testing framework, we can run Sentinel. This is why I don't type during these things. Sentinel test. Did I go in the wrong directory? Yeah. Policies. Sentinel test. There we go. So that testing framework is going to, again, look for those files. In this case, whoops, let me go to my editor. We'll look at the ingress. And we've got just a couple of simple tests, one for one that's going to fail, that we expect to fail, and then one that we expect to pass. The way these tests work is, since we need a plan to operate on, we can create a mock of a plan from an actual Terraform plan. Sentinel has some tools to do that. And then we can save that plan. And as you can see, it's got like a full plan, so we wouldn't want to write this ourselves. That's where saving the plan and using the mocks can help us. And this is the allowed one, so it does not have that 0, CIDR block. And this one, if we look, 0, yeah. So as part of the ingress rules, it's allowing that forbidden CIDR block. So that's why we have both. That's how we have both the pass and the test versions, the pass and the fail versions of the test. Okay, so let's look at the policy set in action within HCP Terraform. So to do that, I'm going to go in and attempt to provision one of these forbidden CIDR blocks. So I'll go in and I'll edit my module manually and say, you know what, I really do want the entire world to have access to my Bastion host for some reason. So up until now, we've been using this example 192 address to like be our corporate VPN or something like that. But if we change that to 4 zeros, that's going to mean everyone on the internet can access our Bastion host. And we don't want that. And just as a reminder, we also set Wednesday as a day where we cannot deploy things. Let's flickering for a second. Whoops. And I'm in the wrong directory again. Go back to this directory. Plan. All right. And again, that's going to run within HCP Terraform. Assuming I didn't make any mistakes, I'm going to expect 2 policy failures here. One is going to be an advisory policy, and let's look at that real quick. Sentinel. I know I'm opening a lot of files here, so I'm trying to go back and give a little breadcrumb here. So the Friday, or in this case Wednesday deploy, is an advisory one, so that will just print out a warning, and then the public ingress is soft mandatory. In other words, the kind of mandatory that isn't that mandatory, that can be overridden by an operator. And there we go, we got both of those failed. So it will tell us why, and we do have the opportunity to set a description telling our operator, again, why this failed and how to remediate it, keeping in mind that this is often going to be different teams and different people. So let's go back and fix our two failures. So the first one, that's as easy as a little undo. And then for the second, I'll actually go into the UI here and change the parameter for the forbidden days to Friday. Edit. So this is Friday. Save. So now both of our policies will, I hope, pass. Apply. Okay. And again, just to reiterate, this happened at plan time. And so Terraform just built-in Terraform, picked up the change, created a plan, and that's where Sentinel took over and said, oh, look, inside this plan, we're changing this CIDR block to the forbidden value, and that's where we fail. Since we, yep, okay, we're still planning. Okay, and that plan should just take a few moments. Let me just catch up with my notes, make sure I didn't forget to talk about anything policy-wise. I don't think I did. So yeah, while that plan is running, I'll go ahead and open it up to questions again. Any questions? No. Okay. Well then, we'll have a moment of peace and quiet while the plan finishes. And then next we'll talk about drift. Let's see, anything else about policies? Yeah, like I said, you can either use Sentinel or OPA. The tutorial itself gives you the OPA version as well. Really the only difference is in the policy language. There we go. So our plan completed. There weren't any changes to apply, so it just went to the green no changes screen. But we can see that now that both of our policies have passed. So once you enable policies, you'll kind of see that they're being checked every time. Now these policies might work well when we are applying our changes and provisioning infrastructure. But as I'm sure you know, sometimes things happen outside of Terraform to where something breaks or something is changed without a Terraform apply. So in general, we call that drift. There's been a drift between your configuration and your resources. And a lot of the times, that's pretty benign. Most complex cloud providers will have a bunch of default attributes that get set up in the Cloud API. So that'll technically be drift because your Terraform state didn't know about the default value that Azure or AWS set for whatever security group value that you didn't provide one for. But occasionally they can be dangerous. It could indicate a problem, so we do want to know about that. And that's where drift detection comes in. I need to enable it. Again, drift detection is a paid feature. So if you're on a free account, you won't have this health assessment screen. But I guess consider this the upsell portion of the Learn tutorial. But what health assessments do is they run periodically, and there's two kinds. There's drift detection, which is really just detecting that delta between your configuration or your state and what's actually going on upstream. There's also continuous validation that will continuously run those checks that we talked about. Again, that change may be something that's changed outside. Another classic example is if you've got something that's going to expire, like a domain or a certificate that expires every few years, you might have a check to say, oh, is it expiring in the next 3 months or something that we actually need to renew that. So regardless, I'll go ahead and enable health assessments. And in general, that should pick up fairly quickly, but sometimes it takes a few minutes to run the first assessment. So I'm just going to run a quick Terraform apply just to make sure we get that first health assessment before we go and break stuff. And that will take just a few minutes. So while that's running, I'll go ahead and do the navigation parts. So for the example scenario, we're imagining, okay, we have an engineer who's troubleshooting something, and for some reason, maybe they can't get on the VPN or whatever. They need to make a manual change. So that engineer logs into the AWS console in this case, navigates to the correct region. We're in US East 2 here. And finds their security groups somewhere. There they are. So I'm going to look for, am I in the wrong region? I think I'm in the wrong region. Let me double check. Which region were we? Variables. US East 2, yeah, you're in the correct region. Security groups. That's odd. Sorry, let me just make sure I'm working with the right security group. So we did do that. Okay. Okay, there we go. There's the security group. Okay, so here's the security group for that we just created for this demo. You can see I've got a couple of others that are hanging out there. But this one is, it's managed by Terraform. So we're going to edit the inbound rules, and I'm going to make that manual change to where we're allowing the whole internet access to our Bastion host. And AWS warns us about that, but isn't going to prevent it. Before I save that, yes, okay. So we've enabled health checks. So once I make that change, the next time HCP Terraform runs a health check, it will notice that rule failing and let us know. So let me find that here. Okay. I needed to reload the page there because I guess it had the not ready cached. So. Now, the health assessments will run every day on HCP Terraform schedule. Oops, touched my mic. But you can also run one manually so we can see what's going on. And that's essentially going to do another Terraform plan in the background, and it will detect drift. And we can also have it do continuous validation. So here's the drift that we noticed. Okay. And this output is, again, very much like a Terraform plan that would be run if we wanted to run Terraform to fix this. And like I said earlier, drift may or may not be a bad thing. It may be that somebody made a change that we want to keep, and the right thing to do is to change our configuration. So you do need to think a little bit about what the right mitigation strategy is here for an issue like this. So in this case, we do want to go ahead and fix it. So I can run a Terraform apply from here. And since we're changing it to a good value, we won't fail that policy. It was only when the policy itself specified that it's only when setting that value with a create or update. One thing to keep in mind there, though, is you do want to write your policies carefully and think about, like, okay, is this going to trigger at the right time? So here in just a moment, once it's all done refreshing, we'll get the chance to apply that change. Just want to make sure I didn't leave anything out there. Yeah, okay. And I just wanted to show this on the screen. It might take a few minutes, though. So now we've looked at three different things. We looked at preconditions and postconditions, which as a module author, you'll write. We didn't talk about them today, but as a module author, you'll also want to look into writing tests for your Terraform modules. Again, just making sure that they're correct before you publish them to your organization. Then we looked at policy, more of an organization or a project-wide concern, where we can check from outside of our Terraform configuration to ensure that what we're deploying meets with our company or security policies. And then finally, drift detection and health assessments are more used by your production teams, the people actually managing that infrastructure day to day, to say, okay, did something change? Did something break? And I can go ahead and apply that there as well. Okay, so that covers everything we had to cover in the lab today. I'll open it up once more to any questions, any thoughts from the audience, and also we can switch back to the presentation for the thank you slide. Give you a chance. Any questions? Go ahead. We got a microphone for you right there.
Thank you. I had a question related to the execution of the plan and maybe even the apply of Terraform along with Sentinel.
Mm-hmm.
Does that run also on CI/CD pipelines, or is it's a different use case?
Yeah, so you can use it with a CI/CD pipeline. The method that I showed included setting up that the policy set once. And that does work with CI/CD pipelines. If you want to apply it to like a given set of projects and you just always want that policy to run, there is also an API so that if you're doing something a little more advanced like automating setting up CI/CD pipelines, automating your automation, you can set them up that way as well.
Right, so if I run an apply on a config and I want to use a policy set from Sentinel defined in HCP, I've seen the soft mandatory, I've seen the warning type of sort of output. Mm-hmm. What kind of sort of exit is it? Is it like a non-zero, or is there a way to have like soft fails? Because in pipelines, you know, you can break a pipeline. So if it's something that's not big of a deal, you may like sort of skip, soft fail it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think in that case, you would want to do the soft mandatory, soft fail, and it would be a notification.
So it's a non-zero?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can configure it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a hard fail.
Yeah.
Like mandatory, you wouldn't want, right?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Say that into the microphone
So you wouldn't want to set it as mandatory in that case because it would require interaction from the pipeline and then just block you. So yeah, you could set it as either a soft fail or as a warning and just let the pipeline go through. Or if you really wanted it as a hard fail, you could set it to be as part of the policy as a hard fail. Yeah. In the policy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No.
And I believe, but I'm not 100% certain, that if you are doing like a CI/CD, you get those policy results as part of the return value, like from Terraform Cloud. Like if you're using the, HCP Terraform, if you're using the HCP Terraform API, you can interrogate those results. Yeah, I'd have to look up the documentation to do that. I'll do that after this because that's a good question. But I'm pretty sure you get everything and can base your logic on that.
Be in the run API, yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thoughts? Concerns? Okay. I think we just have just a quick recap. So you want to use those preconditions and postconditions for configuration level validation. So you're writing those along with your modules and distributing them with your modules. And then Sentinel or OPA for HCP Terraform is generally like a security team. So that's the bad guys not letting you do stuff, but also keeping us safe. So that is why you want that a little bit separate from your configuration. Because if it's in the configuration, well, I can always just change it. And you'll also think about, okay, is this more of a warning or is it like a mandatory failure? And then drift detection is about the ongoing health of your infrastructure. So did something change outside of Terraform that we need to react to? Or again, there's some time-based things like certificate expiring that we might want to have a health check for as well. All right. So again, I think I was supposed to have the QR code on that slide as well. So I'm just going to sneak back to the one with the QR code. Oh, do we have another question? Yeah, go ahead. Let's run you a mic and we'll go from there. Anyway, there's the QR code for the lab. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And I'll go ahead and take questions as long as there are people.
For the drift, for the drift detection, can it generate like events that other systems could read? Like it could be a security event that you had drift. Someone stood up a EC2 or changed something. So it's not just, so is there are ways to do alerts through drift detection?
It would be a drift on a resource that's already managed by Terraform. So I don't know about, I mean, I guess hypothetically you could use a data source or something to find something like that. But generally it's about stuff that's already managed by Terraform. And again, as far as like automation and detection, you can use the HCP Terraform API to get the results of that. I think it supports webhooks, but I haven't actually used it, so I don't want to speak out of turn there. But the documentation is on the developer site.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay, I know we're a little early, but giving you all the time back. So thank you so much. Thanks.